The ad is 3 lines long: private island, Caribbean, $120,000 a year. One condition at the bottom: absolute discretion. Something shifts in your stomach when you read that last part. Not fear. Recognition. You know exactly what that phrase is buying. You apply anyway. 48 hours later, your phone rings. 3 questions. Do you speak another language? Have you ever been arrested? And can you keep your mouth shut? 11 seconds flat. No hesitation. No pause. 3 seconds of silence on the other end. Then, you start Monday, 24 years old. Best day of your life. It isn't. Miami. Private terminal. No airline logo on anything. A man in a gray suit hands you a phone. Not yours. Theirs. Your phone disappears into a sealed envelope. No explanation. The pilot looks at you once, boarding the way a doctor looks at a patient before a diagnosis he already knows. 40 minutes later, an island that doesn't appear on commercial maps. The island is beautiful. That's the first thing they want you to notice. They designed it that way, so your eyes go to the water, the gardens, the main house. Not to the blue and gold building on the hill with the dome and no windows. No one mentions it. The silence around it has a shape. Your boss greets you personally. 60-something, fake tan, linen suit, handshake too firm. Not a greeting. An assessment. His eyes are deciding something about you in real time. He gives you the rules himself. That alone tells you something. Show up Monday. Leave Friday. Don't ask who the guests are. Don't speak to them unless they speak first. And the cameras, every hallway, every room, every corner, those cameras don't exist. Understood. First Friday night, 4 men off the plane. Expensive suits, easy posture. The walk of people who have never once been told no. 2 bottles to the terrace. And then you stop. Because the man at the far end is a face you've watched on television since childhood. The man who once ran the most powerful country on earth. Standing here, glass in hand, laughing like a man with nothing left to fear. You set the bottles down, you smile, you disappear. The chef catches your eye on the way back and shakes his head once. That is the only orientation you will ever receive. More planes. Every Friday. Same type of man. Different face. The one who owns more satellites than most governments. 3rd weekend in a row. Always sweating. Always nervous. His glass refilled twice. Both times no eye contact. Not rudeness. The look of a man who signed something years ago and has been waiting for the bill ever since. The prince. Quiet arrival. Quiet exit. But his staff arrive first, briefing the house manager on camera positions, specific rooms, specific sightlines, a list of places no recording equipment should be visible. You are the one who moves the cameras. Your boss watches, says nothing. His silence is its own kind of instruction. The man with the sunset-colored hair. 4 hours, 1 brand of soda, never stays the night. Twice he asks about the building on the hill. Twice your boss laughs and changes the subject. Years from now, he'll say he barely knew your boss. The flight logs tell a different story. You were there when those logs were filed. And then there is the woman who manages everything. Arrivals, introductions, schedules, arrangements. She moves through this place like she built it. The East Wing, Saturday mornings, extra cleaning. You ask once what kind of extra. She looks at you the way your boss did on day 1. Then, you'll understand by next Saturday. She's right. And after that Saturday, something closes permanently behind your eyes. 6 months in, no meeting, no warning. The number in your account is simply higher. $150,000. Not a reward, a reclassification. No longer staff, inventory. The money isn't payment for silence. It's evidence that your silence was never yours to give. They already own it. You stay. 2 systems run this island. The visible one, meals, logistics, hospitality. And the one after midnight, East Wing. The rooms you clean Saturday mornings but cannot enter any other time. One night, moving inventory in the basement, voices through the ceiling. Your boss and a man whose voice gives press conferences. I have everything recorded, every room, every moment. One clip, that's all it takes. The other man laughs. The laugh of someone who accepted a cage so long ago he stopped feeling the bars. 90 seconds, completely still. Then back to work. Because confirmed suspicion is a door that locks behind you. The blue building on the hill, sent once to move equipment. You expect storage. What you find stops you at the door. Rows of hard drives, screens, cables, terabytes of material, all labeled by date, by name, by location, organized with the precision of a professional intelligence operation. Not a vacation island, a collection operation, the most sophisticated private blackmail infrastructure ever built. He didn't make his money managing funds. He made it managing secrets. And you are standing in the room where those secrets live. You move the equipment. You leave. You say nothing. Your hands are steady. There is one Saturday morning you cannot make yourself forget. East Wing. Extra cleaning. Don't look, don't think, move fast, leave. But someone left something behind in one of the rooms. A single shoe. Small, the kind a teenager wears. No person. Just the shoe, sitting in the middle of the floor like a question you don't want answered. You pick it up. You stand there holding it for a moment. Then you set it down. Walk out. Close the door. That night, $150,000 feels like a number on a price tag. Yours. The lie stops working that night, and it never works again. You make the decision 3 weeks before the arrest, not because you are brave, because you cannot unsee that room. A journalist, 3 layers between you and any conversation. Dates, descriptions, the server room location, the Saturday schedule, enough to verify, not enough to trace. For the first time in a long time, you don't feel like inventory anymore. 3 weeks later, Miami. The news breaks. You watch it on television. The handcuffs, the walk, the smile that still doesn't reach his eyes. You already did what you needed to do. You turn off the television, make coffee, sit by the window. Somewhere out there, a journalist has everything. You just have to wait. That night, every car that slows outside your building, you watch it. Every unknown number you don't answer. Every unfamiliar face clocked, filed, gone. Living like you're already being followed. Maybe you are. 1 month later, dead in his cell. Official finding, suicide. Broken neck bones inconsistent with hanging. Both guards asleep. Same window. Cameras offline. Night before a federal hearing. Suicide. No shock. Just the ground shifting. If they removed him, a man with leverage to bring down 50 of the most powerful people alive, then leverage alone doesn't protect you. He had everything. And he's dead. What does that make you? A loose end. That thought lands in your chest and stays there. Silence isn't a shield. Silence just makes you easier to erase quietly. A story in print is the only thing that makes your death inconvenient. Dead men can't protect themselves. But stories, once out, cannot be unprinted. They never find you. No public record. No social presence. No paper trail. 2 years spent becoming no one. When the moment came to disappear, you were already practiced. The island is seized, photographed from helicopters, the blue building, the server room, the cameras. Everything you saw confirmed in court documents. On the public record now. 31 now. Small apartment. Cash jobs. Corner booth. Back to the wall. Facing the door. Old habit. You've stopped asking where it came from. The men you served champagne to are still powerful. Some more than ever. That's not a failure. That's the system working exactly as designed. But the recordings exist. You were in that room. You know, whoever holds that archive holds the most dangerous leverage in modern history. The island is gone. Your boss is gone. The woman who managed everything is in a cell. The information is not gone. It waits. Still here. Still invisible. Still breathing. In a world where knowing too much is a death sentence. The only ones who survive are those who make their knowledge more dangerous released than buried. You figured that out just in time. Subscribe to Unlived Life. The rest of these stories don't end this cleanly.